Yo, what's happening, guys? It is GM Cody back with another video. I just want to say, first off, we've reached over 300 subscribers, which is fucking nuts to me. Thanks a lot, guys. Really cool that so many people were interested in just hearing me talk about games and stuff that I love. That is really awesome, and I greatly appreciate everybody that's subscribed and all the support and everybody that just wants to hear me talk about games and all these stories that I tell. And it's really cool that all you guys have done so that's really cool, and I really appreciate it. So I'm a couple beers in, and I just got done playing in Bear's Star Trek game this week, which was really awesome. It's been really, really cool. It's been a long time since I've got to play in a really good game. It's really rare that I get to play at all. I usually have to GM. Obviously, I'm GM Cody, right? So usually I'm the GM. So I rarely get to play and actually play in a game, and to play in a really good game with a really good GM and really good players is really awesome. So it's been a long time since that's happened, and it's really cool. And if you guys haven't checked that out, of course, the streams are on my channel, and also go check out Bear, the Gen X GM's channel. And if you haven't already subscribed to his channel, please go do so, because he does awesome stuff over there, and he's been running that game. But I thought I'd go ahead and knock out my video for this week, and we're going to talk about my gaming origin story, part 2. The reason being is because I promised I would do a part 2, but also I had a new viewer on the channel that was very interested in my gaming origin story, and so it got me thinking about doing the part 2 to that story. So part 1 of that story, I think I haven't gone back and watched it in a while, so I don't know where I left off, but basically I think I left off where I was in my middle school years. So just to give you guys context, I'm 37, so I'm not that old. But if you've watched part 1 of my video, I've been gaming since I was 9. So that's almost 30 years at this point that I've been gaming, and I've played a lot of different types of games and a lot of games, and I've never stopped gaming over that period of time. So I've had a lot of gaming, needless to say, in my life, and it's been a big part of my my life, right? So just give you guys some context as to what my actual age is and, where I'm coming from. But, last video we were kind of talking about where I got started, how I got started in gaming, when I got introduced, and kind of my first foray into gaming. The second part will kind of be, I guess you'd call it, the golden years of my gaming, when I was doing the most gaming. So last time we left off in middle school, and we were talking about the group I used to play with Dustin. Now, I talked briefly about that group. Well, I talked pretty extensively about it, but towards the end of, I was also talking about how, me and my other friends kind of went off and formed our own group to supplement Dustin's group. When we weren't playing with Dustin, I was playing with another group. And also, I would just play, we would play all the time. I would play a lot with Andy and Vince, who were on the channel. Every other day when we get home from school, I'd just go over next door because they lived right across the street from me. And I think, I don't know, maybe they were, but I always got the impression they weren't as into it as I was. Maybe they were. They can correct me if they were. But I remember just, I was so encompassed and obsessed with gaming at that time. Like, it was like every day when I get off the school bus, I'd be like, hey guys, let's game, So anybody that wanted to game with me anytime, any day, any hour, I would do it back then, and probably still would if I could, to be honest with you. That passion really hasn't left me, but I digress. But anyways, Dustin's group towards the end of middle school, that started to peter off a little bit. And the reason being is because Dustin he was older than us anyways. And when he got in high school, he fell in with a different crowd, and he started becoming hip and cool, or whatever, and he got a little too cool for school for us, and stopped gaming altogether. So we stopped gaming with Dustin. But the rest of my group from middle school, we kept gaming, and we kept the tradition going. So, every Friday night, that's where I was. Yeah, I wasn't at Dustin's house now, but I was over at Andrew's house, which this is French Horde Andrew, not miniature, or not the other Andrew that I mentioned that introduced me to gaming. Even though we did game too a lot, solo, like 101. But I had this other group, like I said, we went off and formed our own thing. And after Dustin's group kind of fell off, me and Andrew's group kind of kept going. And we had a pretty good crew. I can't remember all the guys that were with us. It was me, Andrew. We had this guy named, I can't remember his name now. Jeez. Oh, man. I can't remember his name, but he was this jock dude. And what was funny about him was he was really nerdy, and he was really into gaming, but he was kind of a jock. So he would always tell us, be like, don't tell my other friends that I game with you guys on the weekend or whatever. So it was really funny because he game with us on the weekend, all weekend. And then the week would come around in the school and he would act like he didn't know us and be like, oh, I don't know those guys or whatever. Josh was his name. And he was a cool dude, but it was funny how he had this like dual life going on. On the weekends, he'd nerd out with us. And during the week, he was this cool preppy jock kid wearing his, Tommy Hilfiger, polo shirts and stuff, but hanging out with all the cheerleaders and all that. So we had that guy, and we had a couple other people in that group, and I can't remember their names, to be honest. And it really saddens me that I can't remember their names. But needless to say, we probably had 4 to 6 people, and people would come and go, in that group. And what happened is when Dustin's group fell off, like I said, when I was playing with Dustin, I was a player, not so much GM. But with the other group, I would GM most of the time. And when Dustin kind of went off and left and did his own thing and fell in with other people, I became the full-time GM. So this isn't the first time I was the full-time GM. Of course, when I first started gaming, I was a full-time GM. I started off as a game master, so I just kind of naturally fell in that role again. But, this time I had more experience under my belt, and I'm running like full proper campaigns. And this is really my first foray of running a regular group every week, like a full campaign. And mostly at that time we would play D&D. Now, of course, I was talking about last time we were mostly playing AD&D 2nd edition. Well, around this time, towards the end of middle school, 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons came out. And we all knew it was coming out. It had come out when we were still playing with Dustin's group. And Dustin got the books and everything. And we played it a couple times, but we didn't really take to it. And we just stuck with AD&D 2nd edition. But around this time, for some reason, we really latched on to 3rd edition. So at that time, this is around 8th grade. I'm around, 14 years old, I guess. We were playing a lot of 3rd edition D&D. And that's pretty much all we were playing. Like I've said before, we would regularly play a lot of different games. Well, at this little piece of time, we were playing we were playing pretty much only 3rd edition D&D. And a few other things. I think another game, I would run occasionally was Alternity, which I should have got the book off the shelf, but it was one of TSR's last hurrahs before the TSR trademark went away. This is after they got bought by Wizards of the Coast, and it was a pretty good science fiction role-playing game that I really loved at the time. I haven't played it in a long time, so I don't know if it holds up as well as I remember, but I remember it being really good. And I ran a lot of Alternity too, but mostly it was 3rd edition D&D, and we had this group, and we played a lot of 3rd edition D&D. We played a lot of Alternity. We played a lot of Hero Quest, which is the Games Workshop Milton Bradley collaboration board game, which we picked up at a yard sale somewhere. We really loved that game. Even though it was much older than what we were, we played a lot of that. And we played other versions of D&D too. I was this is when I was really into 1st edition AD&D and also BX D&D. And so occasionally I would talk the guys into playing that But mostly they just wanted to play 3rd edition, so that's what we played. We also played a lot of miniatures games too. We were playing a lot of Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Fantasy a little bit, mostly Warhammer 40,000. And everybody in that group pretty much had a Warhammer 40K army. And Andrew, Frenchhorn Andrew, who I talked about last time, he had a really nice, gaming board, like professional made Games Workshop board that he bought, his dad bought or whatever from the Games Workshop store. So he had that board. And actually, I think that board now has been passed on to one of the game stores here, if I'm not mistaken. I've played on that board multiple times. So it's pretty funny that board was originally in a Games Workshop store, was bought by Andrew, and I think Andrew sold it to one of the game stores here, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the same board. But anyways, he had a really nice setup in his living room, and we could play Warhammer 40,000. We all had little tiny like Warhammer armies, and we'd play that too. So those were really good times playing with those guys. And we would play, like all weekend we'd play, whatever games. A lot of times it was D&D, but we'd play other stuff too. Like I said, we play Hero Quest and Axis and Allies, which I still have the copy we used to play, which I got when I was probably about 12 years old, the original box of Axis and Allies. And we'd play that a lot because we actually had 6 people to sit there and play every faction in Axis and Allies. But we basically play from like Friday to Sunday and probably would not sleep much in between, which is crazy. And I think, we annoyed the hell out of Andrew's mom doing that back then. I remember several times we'd be up till dawn and we'd be playing a game and getting too loud and her waking up and just yelling at us for, go to bed, get out of my house, but we just kept playing anyways. We'd actually go to sleep and wait till she went to bed and we'd keep playing. And we sleep for a few hours and get up and play again. But anyways, yeah, needless to say, we did a lot of gaming at that time and a lot of fond memories from playing with that group for that short a time. The other significant thing about that, and I sort of kind of forgot about it till recently, is that was at this exact time in 8th grade, I met the first girl that gamed with us as well. And I don't think she would mind me mentioning her name, and I think she's subscribed to the channel now and started watching, and I just recently started reconnecting with her, and her name is Sarah. And so I met Sarah in the 8th grade, and we didn't have any girls that played with us before that. I never met any girls that were interested in anything that we were interested in, like gaming and, all these nerdy movies like Star Wars and Star Trek and Indiana Jones and Back to the Future and Legend and Excalibur and all that stuff, and all these books we were reading like Dune and Lord of the Rings. Anyways, I didn't meet any girls that were interested in that stuff until I met Sarah. So I met Sarah in the 8th grade, and I was in science class. Now, I should also explain that I was not a good student. Okay, I barely passed, high school. I just didn't give a shit about school at all. I was probably smart enough and capable enough to really excel in public school, but I did not. I just did not give a shit about school. So usually I can distinctly remember me like in 8th grade in science class, and I always had D&D books with me and always had my notebooks. And if I wasn't doing that, like making up like maps and the next adventure we were going to play at the weekend, I was doing that, or I was sleeping, or I was reading a book that I wasn't supposed to be reading. That was not like school book, At this time, I was kind of sleeping. I was catnapping, probably because I'd been up late, like playing computer games or something. And it was 8th grade science class, and in walks the teacher with this girl, brand new girl. She introduces her to the class. Now, the first thing I kind of like opened my eyes for my cat nap, and then immediately like rose up from the, my head off the desk when I realized this girl was wearing a Star Wars shirt. And she was wearing this very old, tattered Star Wars shirt with Darth Vader on it. And I was just like, holy shit, this is a girl wearing a Star Wars shirt. Now, in science class, we always had like a science partner. I think most science classes are like that in high school and middle school. And this was no exception. And in this class, we had a partner. Now, I was the only person in the class that did not have a partner, and probably for good reason, because I wasn't even like really in the class. I was just there. I was present, but I was not there. So the teacher was like, fuck it. Cody could be the odd man out or whatever. Or maybe I wasn't. I don't know. But I if I remember right, I think I was probably the only person in there without a partner. So she, the teacher introduced Sarah and was like, Sarah needs a science partner. Who wants to be her partner? And immediately I raised up my hand. I was like, hey, I don't have a partner. She can be my partner. So, the teacher was, amazed that, Cody is awoken from his slumber and is actually like interested in taking the new kid on. So new girl comes over, sits next to me. And first thing I asked her right off the bat, I'm like, holy shit, do you like fucking Star Wars? And she's like, yeah, I like Star Wars, but I like Star Trek better. And I was like, well, damn, I like Star Trek too. And so we just immediately hit it off and we became friends right off the bat. And it was the first girl I really became friends with, like really related to. Because girls my age at that time, even though I was attracted to them or whatever, I was not interested in them because I thought they were just vain and stupid and not interesting. And here was a girl that was actually like into stuff I was into. And, she was, she was interesting. And she was interested in what I was talking about. And so, of course, the next questions I started asking her was, hey, do you play D&D? She's like, no, I don't play D&D, but I've heard about it and I'm really interested in it. I was like, well, why don't you come play D&D with us? Like, we play D&D every weekend. I've got a group of guys, if you don't mind hanging out with a bunch of guys. And I think you'd really like it. Because she explained to me that she really liked creating worlds and she was a writer. She carried a notebook around and I could see that was like stuff she was writing and stuff. And I was like, you'd really like D&D. You should, you like fantasy and science fiction. You would really like this. And so she's like, yeah, cool. And so I think it was that day, probably, she walked home from school with me to hang out. And of course, my mom was weirded out because I'm bringing a girl home from school. But really, I wasn't like, it was just another like friend, it was just another nerdy friend, somebody else that was into the same stuff I was into. So that was really cool. So she came home with me and we became really good friends from then on out. And that following weekend, she fell right in and started playing D&D with us. And she was a regular member of our D&D group. And that was the first time I had hanging around a girl really and playing with a girl. And it was a really different experience. And that was really fun. So, yeah. So that definitely was a eye-opening and different experience to have, a female at the gaming table for the first time. And the guys were really, into that as well. I mean, obviously everybody was interested in having a cute girl there, but also, it was awesome to have a girl there that was actually interested in what we were doing, what we were playing and everything. And she got fully into it. And I remember she always played a druid, always. And she was really into the game and it was really awesome. And so moving on from that point in time, so we had this group, after middle school though, what happened is middle school ended and the zoning changed for high schools. So half the people I went to middle school with went to a different high school than I was going to. So my gaming group all lived on the other end of the street, and all those people went to a different high school, with the exception of a few. Obviously Andy Events lived in the same zoning as me, and Sarah did, oddly enough, which I never really quite understood because she lived on that side of the street too. So she should, I would think she should have gone to the other high school, but she went to our high school. But for some reason, she went to ours. So that group pretty much broke up, with the exception of a few. So I held on to what I had when high school started. And so I still had Sarah, I had Andy and Vince, and I had, like a few other people hanging around, and I can't remember who exactly, but, basically that group split up and everybody went their separate ways. And I stopped talking to a lot of those guys, and I haven't talked to a lot of them since then. I would like to be honest with you. It'd be really cool to reconnect with some of those guys, that I used to hang out with and game with back then. But a lot of them I just lost contact with because we went to different schools and we just kind of like fell out, But I still had this little group, this little cadre. We didn't. I don't really remember if we were still gaming on the regular, but I'm pretty sure we did. If it was me, I think I would have kept it going, but I can't really remember if we did or not. But we were still gaming regardless. Another thing to note is towards the end of middle school, I met this older guy that was already in high school, and his name was Brandon. And Brandon was kind of a dick. So the way I got, but kind of cool at the same time. He was an interesting character. So the way I met Brandon was through Andrew. And me and Andrew were hanging out one Saturday, and the rest of the group wasn't there. It was just me and Andrew. And I was like, man, I really want a game. It was like early in the morning, too. It was like, maybe we had been up all night or we just woke up early. I don't really know, but it was pretty early in the morning, and we were like sitting there in his like mom's kitchen, like eating cereal or whatever, like watching TV. And I was like, dude, I really want a game today, but it's just me and you. And he's like, oh, not a problem. Like, I know this other dude. He's older. He lives right down, just a few houses down. He's older than us, but like, he's always willing to game, like always. I'm like, really? I'm like, why isn't he game with us before? I'm like, well, whatever, I don't know. But so for whatever reason, like Andrew calls this guy and he comes over and Brandon shows up and we play Alternity and I'm running the game. And, yeah, so, Brandon definitely was a pretty stout, stocky guy, and he was older than us, and he definitely would show his dominance. You know what I mean? Like he was kind of a bully, which was fine. I didn't take any shit from anybody, but at the same time, like he still would like push and shove when he could. But I definitely got that feeling off of him, like the first time I met him. But at the same time, he was also kind of like protective of like his, like if you were his friend, like he would kind of adopt you and push you around and bully you and pick on you, but at the same time, he would not let anybody pick on you. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of a weird dichotomy. So anyways, Brandon starts playing with us for a little bit, and every once in a while, he would like drop in and play with us. And fast forward to high school, like I said, everybody had like gone their separate ways, and I still had this little cadre of people when we were gaming. And, so one day, like we would always game, like high school started. I'm a freshman in high school. And, we'd always game whenever there was like a pep rally or like there was some like extracurricular thing going on, like that wasn't mandatory. Like all the goth kids and the punk kids and the skater kids and the stoner kids and the nerds would like, drift off to the cafeteria and just hang out there for however long this shit was going on and do their own thing. And so that's what we used to always do. We were the misfit nerd kids. And so we would drift off to the cafeteria and we would game. We would game whenever we had an opportunity, lunch or whatever. So I'm running like a D&D game for everybody. And I had like, Andy and Vince and Sarah and like probably a couple other people there that I can't really remember. And I'm sitting there gaming. And behind me, I see this other group playing D&D too, like literally right behind us. And I'm like, holy shit. They're like older too. And I was like, holy shit, there's another group here like playing D&D. I thought we were the only ones. Now, I should say that I had seen these guys before. So my first year, like my first like semester, first time I'm a freshman, you know, my lunch period, I didn't like we had like 4 lunch periods in high school, and my lunch period in like the first year, like first semester or whatever, quarter or whatever that I'm a freshman, I didn't have anybody I knew in my lunch period. So I was always like sitting by myself, and it was really miserable or whatever. But anyways, I digress. So during that lunch period, I had seen these guys previously. I knew they were older. I knew they had to at least be like juniors or seniors. But I would see them every lunch period, and they would be playing like Magic the Gathering or like some other card game like that or whatever. And they would always be playing games during the lunch break, but I was just too afraid to go over there and like introduce myself and like talk to them. But I would always like watch what they were doing and everything. So I was already aware these guys existed. So meanwhile, fast forward a little bit. I'm sitting there like, you know, this is freshman year. I'm still playing with the old, you know, half the old gang from middle school. And we're sitting there playing, I think it was BX D&D. We're playing BX. And behind me, these older guys are playing D&D too. And I see Brandon is over there with this group playing D&D as well. And I'm like, holy shit. So I kind of turn around and like, I guess I don't think I had talked to Brandon for a little while. And I was like, hey man, how you doing? Like, what's up? And like, you know, how's it going? And Brandon's like, good man, like good to see you and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, introduced me to the game master over there, the dungeon master. He's like, hey, this is Jason. You know, he's like our regular dungeon master. We play every weekend. You should come play with us. And I was like, yeah, totally. And Jason's like was a super friendly guy, super talkative, and obviously the most charismatic amongst the group of guys playing here. And he like is immediately like, yeah, dude, you need to come play with us. Like Brandon's told me about you, and you're like a good player and everything, and you know that's really cool. And you should come play with us on Fridays. I'm like, cool, yeah. So, so needless to say, we exchanged information or whatever, and I met these guys through Brandon that had like played with us in middle school, and we went back to our game or whatever, and then I guess I can't remember because it's like the foggy ether of time, but you know, this is like 20 something years ago. But I think it was probably the next weekend or not too soon after I get invited over to Chase's house, who, if you know who Chase is, you know, one of my partners in crime here on the channel and plays in my OSC game and used to be the co-host to Ragnar Grumbles. But this is where I met Chase at. I get invited over to Chase's house, and this is where these guys play. And they're all seniors, except for one's a junior, I think. And so I get invited over there to play with these guys. And I'm not really super intimidated to go play with them. I'm just excited I get to go play D&D with another group, and I get to play. So I show up willingly, and you know, I roll up a character, and immediately I realize this group is very different from every other group I've played with. This guy, Jason, running this game, is a totally different type of GM. He was a really good game master, but he would anything went with Jason. So the first thing he asked me is like, what do you want to play? You know, so I don't really remember the conversation, but I'm sure I was just like, you know, oh, I'm going to play an elven thief or whatever. He's like, no. You can play anything. And I'm just like, what? He's like, yeah, just tell me what you want to play. So I just came up with the craziest thing. And I think I was playing like a half demon, you know, half elf dude. And I was going to play a cleric. And he's like, cool. And he gave me all these magic items. And it was just like, what the fuck is going on? And then, you know, I started getting introduced to the other characters, and like one guy, like I think it was Chase, was playing a Saiyan monk, and I don't remember what everybody else was playing, but it was just like these ridiculous, over the top, like crazy gonzo insane shit, you know. And like this first game was just crazy. We're like fighting dragons like right off the get-go, and like we all got like these super powerful magic items, and we're all these super fantastical creatures. And it was just like blew my mind. I'd never played a game that was just this over the top and this gonzo. I didn't even know what gonzo meant at that time. And this was the most gonzo game I've ever played or seen or anything. Like, Jason was so good at like running these type of games, and it amazes me now that he could do it. Like, this sounds to most people like, oh, this would not work, but it did work, and it worked really well because Jason knew how to do it, and he can handle it. And there was no, like, usually Jason would not say no to anything. He would let you play anything, and anything was possible, and it was just amazing. So, like, I came away from that first gaming session just blown away with this totally new experience of playing with these guys. And it was not the D&D that I was used to playing, right? So, I fell in with these guys and became friends with them. And I started going over there every weekend, and I started getting back into the routine. I was still playing with the other gang too. We would play a lot of times when I wasn't playing with the older guys, but the older guys kind of took me under their wing, and I became part of the crew. For the most part. I think some of the guys kind of were standoffish of me, but most of them, took me under their wing, and I became part of the crew. And every Friday they would come pick me up, and I would play with these guys and play these crazy fucking campaigns. And it was a whole hell lot of fun. And I'm like kind of like at a loss to even know where to start with this, because this time in my life was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I ever had gaming ever. It was also the time when I was gaming the most, probably, I think, because, with those guys, we would play from like Friday till like Sunday, just nonstop. The game was just going. As much as we keep it going, we might go off and get a pizza or something, do whatever, go hang out for a bit, but we come back and keep gaming. And it was just like 2 or 3 days solid of gaming. And I was all about it, and everybody else was. And it was amazing. And I don't even know where to start with with all these crazy adventures we had, because it was insane, there was one where it was, I don't remember the exact number, but I think we fought like 3 Tarrasque and like 5 like elemental demons and 6 dragons, and one of the characters, like the mage character, his cat had become like a divine being and saved us, and like we made up this basically like a Christmas song, 3 Tarrasques, 4 elemental demons, or whatever. So that was one memorable one, even though I can't remember all the details. But all these games were just nutty and crazy and insane, but they were so much damn fun. The other thing I remember about those games is it was just so far apart from traditional D&D that I was used to in my middle school and like younger years. We did not go into dungeons hardly at all. I think I can remember maybe on one hand all those years in high school when we went into dungeons. Most of the time we were doing something else. We never fought like typical monsters. Everything was like over the top crazy. Even if it was a goblin, it wasn't just a regular goblin. This goblin would like spring like tentacles or spikes out of it, and like it was just fucking nuts, like it was just insane. But it was fun. It was really fun. That's all I can say about it, really. And I wish I could remember more stories about those times, like in the D&D games we played. But those are definitely like the most stick out in my mind as some of the most memorable like gaming experiences. And also during this time, like we were, back to form of what I was doing before. We were playing other games besides D&D. We were playing, we played 7th Sea, and we played Vampire the Masquerade. And we made up our own games a lot of times. It got to the point where everybody started writing their own role-playing games, and we played like we played like a Metroid game, and we played a Final Fantasy game, and we played a Dragon Ball Z game, and we wrote our own version of D&D, and we did a lot of homebrew stuff too, and everybody had their own homebrews, and we would like spin off of each other and help each other design those and make it on the fly. And everybody had these notebooks full of like all these homebrew games, and it was really cool and interesting. We played Rifts, and we played Shadowrun, and we played Werewolf, and we played Mage, and we played all kinds of shit. Star Trek. We played a little bit of Star Trek, and we played a little bit of Star Wars. And we even combined that with other games. We had D&D games with Star Wars characters in them. We played Big Eyes, Small Mouth. And, it just went on and on and on. We just played all these different types of games. Of course, the mainstay usually was D&D. And at that time, it was 3rd edition was what we were playing most of the time. But it was probably not like any other 3rd edition D&D game you know. It was just wild and crazy and kooky fun. And I'll never forget it. And Jason was an awesome GM. So, needless to say, I went back to being the full-time GM to being the part-time GM again. This is also, like I said, this is also the time I made some really, these guys became like my closest friends at that time. I was hanging out with these guys all the time, and they kind of took me under their wing. They drove me everywhere, and they drove me to school. They graduated high school, and I was still in high school, and they really adopted me. I was like the second kid, basically, of all these guys, and they would buy me dinner, and they would buy me lunch, and drive me around, and especially Jason and Chase. And this is where I became friends with Chase. So I met Chase during this time, and the funny part about meeting Chase is, and Chase could correct me, because I know he watches the channel sometimes. But I think when we first met, we didn't really like click or get along. But I remember distinctly when the time was we clicked, and it was not too long after, maybe a few months after I started hanging out with these guys. Jason was really into anime, and so he'd subject us to all these crazy animes and Japanese movies and stuff. And sometimes they were cool, and sometimes we were like, what the fuck, Jason? No wonder these games you're running are so crazy. But anyways, so we're staying up watching this crazy anime, and everybody else falls asleep, and me and Chase are kind of blown away by it, actually, because it was pretty deep stuff, and me and him started waxing philosophy, and we went right on until the sun came up, and we were still talking. And it was from then on out we became like best friends, and we still are to this day. So it was right there I made like a lifelong friend, out of gaming, and I've met a lot of those. And, a lot of the people I mention in these stories are lifelong friends and will be forever, and he's one that definitely will be. But it was at that moment me and him like made a connection. We became good friends and realized we had more in common than we thought we did. Gotta get a drink. So, I was gaming with those guys. And, we had a regular group at that time. But we also had, and our group was huge. It was just huge. I can't remember how many people would play with us. Minimal in a week. Like, on a slow week, we'd have like 6 people, 6 players. So 7 counting Jason, who was the full-time GM now. But, most of the time we'd have like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people or more like playing with us. And that was another remarkable part about Jason. He could just roll with it. He'd just roll with it no matter what happened. If he got tired of D&D, he's like, what do you guys want to play tonight? Be like 7C. He's like, cool, I don't know anything about 7C. He wouldn't say that, of course, but he didn't. And we'd roll up characters, and he'd scan through the book real fast. And there'd be like, 12 people there, and he'd be running a game like seamlessly. It was amazing. He was a good GM. So, we had a lot of people coming in and out of that group. And there were so many like crazy characters that came out of that group that didn't stick around the whole time. We had our core group, and then we had these like kooky characters that would come in and out, and annoying ones too. We had some bad ones too, but and I'm not going to like mention all of them or talk about all of them because there's just so many of them. But needless to say, that was a really good time to game. That was also the first time I got into LARPing, because some of those guys were into LARPing, and that was the first time I went and did like a proper like fantasy foam sword like LARP. And we also did like the what do you call it? It wasn't LARPing, but it was just foam sword fighting. We did a lot of that. We started getting into that. And there were older guys, older than us, like hanging out with us that, you know, would game with us too. So that was interesting and whatever. You know, sometimes we would take turns GMing. So, you know, like occasionally, like we would get tired of what we were playing, or Jason would be like, hey, you know, I'm going to take a break. You know, one of you guys want to run a game? And so definitely was the guy, probably like one of the number one guys that was always like stepping up to run a game whenever Jason couldn't run a game. I would run like a one shot, or I'd run like a mini campaign. So I was still GMing at that time. I wasn't like completely not doing it at that time. And I was also still running games for other people. But I would still run games for that group too, just not all the time. I was like the part-time guy, you know, whenever we need like a quick pickup game or whatever, I would run a game for everybody, you know. But there was other guys in the group that could do that too. There was another guy in the group named Jason. He was older than us, and he would run games, and he was a big homebrew guy, and he'd do a lot of homebrew stuff. And he was a pretty good GM too. And I really enjoyed his like homebrew stuff. And, you know, like I think Chase would run games for us occasionally. And we had another guy in the group named Chris, and Chris would run games for us. And, you know, Chris is no longer with us, unfortunately. But I'm not going to go into the details about that because it's just too dark and sad. But, you know, Chris used to run games for us too. And needless to say, you know, we all kind of rotate running different games, and it was a really good time. So I don't know what else to talk about, like, during that time. You know, like, there's just so much. It's just so overwhelming. My brain's just got, like, so many things about that time because it's so memorable. We played so many games and did so much. Just to sum it up, because we're already getting to, like, 40 minutes. After high school. So what happened after high school? So we had this really rich and great group in high school. We gamed constantly, consistently, all the time. We're really tight-knit and really good friends. After high school, that really didn't change. We were still all together, still playing, and some of us kind of went off to college and stuff, but nobody really went off far. Everybody was still in the area, so we could still do our thing. And all the guys, like the core group, the funny part was all those guys like moved in together, and so they were all living together, and I wasn't living with them, but you know, I would still go over there and hang out with them, and we were still gaming on the regular. So everybody was still gaming regular until a couple years later, people started to kind of break off here and there. You know, I think Jason, our regular GM, he finally went off to like regular college. And, you know, a couple other people, you know, got married or got a girlfriend and moved off somewhere else, or somebody else went to college, and people died, unfortunately. You know, we lost a couple guys to different things. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but, you know, we lost a few of these guys, you know, and it sucks and sad and whatever, but we did. But we kept the game going. We kept the group going. And what happened is, because Jason went off and went off to college and stuff, I became the full-time GM again, basically. And so I started GMing the group, and it wasn't the same group per se. It was a couple of us still hanging around, like Chase, mainly, and me, and there were a couple others. But we got some other people, you know, involved that we knew, and so we kept the game going. The game didn't stop. It's also worth saying that, you know, it did slow down a little bit because at that time I personally was interested in other things. So, you know, towards the end of in high school, I started playing music. I actually started playing music in middle school, but I really started playing in high school. So at the beginning of high school was when I started playing drums. And like I said, you know, I've talked about it briefly. I really got good real fast because I just spent a lot of time doing it, and immediately started, you know, garnering attention from people and playing in bands. So this is when I started playing in bands, and the first band I played in was just me and one other dude, and he was the only other punk rock dude in the school, and he was the only guy I knew that was like a punk rocker around anywhere. I mean, he was like the dude that was like the punk rock dude, So he introduced me to that, like culture and philosophy, and he's like, you play drums? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you want to start a band? I'm like, yeah. He didn't even like ask if I could play, anything. He's just like, cool, I'll come over to your house this weekend, we'll play. And of course he found out, I was actually a pretty good drummer, and he kind of like shaped and molded me a little bit and like turned me on to a lot of different types of music. And he was actually a really good guitar player, believe it or not. He was just a super talented dude. Even though he was like into punk, he could actually fucking play. He was just very naturally gifted player. And so needless to say, I don't want to get too far off into like my music story, because that's a totally different story that you guys probably don't want to hear too much about. But needless to say, in high school I started getting involved in different things like music and playing music in bands. I'm going to pause this just for one moment. Sorry, I had to sneeze, so I paused the video. Sorry about that. So, I got into music and I got into other things. And towards the end of high school, I got really serious about playing music and got into some I played in a lot of bands in high school. Out of high school, though, I got like really serious about it and started playing in some professional bands. And like we were actually like playing real gigs and like making some money and like making records and doing the real thing. And I was like, this is what I want to do. At that time, that's what I wanted to do. And getting super serious about it. So like gaming kind of took a back burner, but it never like left me. So after high school, it slowed down a little bit for me. And there were lulls and ups and downs and dips. But I never stopped caring about gaming. I do remember like by the time I was about 20, I was not hardly gaming at all. I didn't have a regular group at that time. Our regular group had broken up now. I didn't have a regular group. And but I remember at that time, like I was still like super interested in gaming. Like even though I wasn't like actively like playing all the time, I still would play any chance I got. And I would even like talk people in the band, like all my band members and playing. I'd be like, hey, let's play D&D, and they're like, cool, you're in D&D. I've never played that before. And I'm like, yeah, I'll run a game for you. So, like my bandmates and me, like I'd run D&D for them, after band practice and shit. Or, it'd be like me, the bandmates, and like the girls, hanging out with us. Girls we were dating or otherwise, So, that I never stopped gaming, needless to say. And I was still playing miniature games too. I was still into 40K and all that stuff, and never quite stopped, but it did definitely slow down when I was in my 20s. And there were, I guess there was, some time there like between 20 and 21 where I hardly gamed at all, but I was still like really interested in it. Like I never like lost interest in it. I still bought books, and I remember like sitting there like still reading like the whatever new books I bought and all that stuff and whatever. So it never quite left me, but it definitely slowed down. And as I was going into my 20s, I was getting more interested in other things, girls, music, and like, gaming was starting to like take a back burner a little bit, but I was still into it. But it took a big back burner by the time I was like 23 or 24. And music was not working out, obviously. And I was working, I pretty much, I went to college, but that didn't work out either. I was like studying to be getting to broadcasting. I was thinking about being a DJ and was like kind of starting to get into broadcasting school. And I even was a DJ and still am, I guess, amateur DJ. That's another thing. But, I was wanting to go that route, but like, I didn't like school. I liked the DJ part. I liked doing the college radio and all that stuff, but I didn't like doing all the, math and like history and science, and I didn't like all that shit. It was just like the same shit I did in high school, and basically I dropped out in thinking I was just going to be a rock and roll drummer or whatever. I was like, 20 years old, so dumb mistake, but whatever. But by the time I got like 23 or 24, it was starting to catch up with me. I was working dead-end jobs. I didn't have a lot going for me. My bands I'd been playing in had all broken up. I didn't have like any prospects in that. I was just at the verge of like breaking through in the music business, and that all fell through. And I was kind of like a dead end there. And then I like kind of got a second life and decided to go off to trade school. And that's how I became a carpenter. My dad is a carpenter too. I don't know if I mentioned that, and he was the one that kind of talked me into doing it. Went to trade school for a year. And it was when I was in trade school, I was living on my own, which I'd already been living on my own a little bit. But now I was really on my own. I was in a completely different city by myself with no money, because I was spending all my money having to go to school. And I had like a very slim budget as far as like groceries and all that stuff. I couldn't just drive around and do whatever I wanted. And I didn't know anybody in this little podunk town. So I didn't find a gaming group there or anything. But while I was there, before I had gone there, I had started another gaming group. And it was like a pretty strong group. And we were like, really gaming. And I guess it's worth talking about that. Let's rewind a little bit. So, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. So I started working at this video store. And all the guys in the video store, I realized that even it was the manager actually that started it. He realized that me and Chase worked there too. He's the one that got me the job. It was, I realized that the manager was a gamer too. And he started talking to us about games. He was like, yeah, I used to be a gamer, when I was younger. And, I used to play like all the World of Darkness stuff and D&D and whatever. And I'd like to get back into it. So what if like all of us here at work, like everybody else at work was gamers too? Like what if, we all like set aside one night where we could all take off and have a regular gaming session every night at my house. And we were like, fuck yeah. So luckily there was these two girls there that could work on Tuesday nights while the rest of us went off and gamed every Tuesday. So that's what we did. And we had this regular great group. It was the manager at the video store and Chase and me. And we had like a few others from the store and some other people from outside the store. And we had this really nice, healthy little gaming group. And we'd meet every Tuesday night, stay up all night and game. And that was a really good group too. We did that for, however long I worked at the video store, probably 2 or 3 years. We had this really good group and had some really good games. And we played a lot of World of Darkness at that time. We were playing everything like Changeling and Mage and Werewolf and Vampire. We played some D&D too, and we played some Shadowrun, and we played some Star Wars, and we were playing all kinds of stuff. But a lot of World of Darkness at that time because Tony, the manager, was really into World of Darkness, and I was too. So we had this really good group, and we would the other thing is we'd alternate who was the GM. I GM most of the time, but like Tony would GM for a little bit, and Chase would GM for a little bit, and we would switch off and alternate, and we'd do these interconnecting campaigns. It was really good stuff. But after that happened and I left the video store and went off to trade school, I was there for almost a year, and basically I just didn't have anything to do because I would go to school. I think it was 5 days a week. Maybe it's 4 days a week. I think it was 4 days a week. And then I have 3 days off with nothing to do. And this is during, I couldn't find a job when I was there. And I didn't have like reliable transportation when I was there. So I was like, well, can't find a job. Like, I guess, I had like enough money to like buy groceries and just hang out. So I was like, well, it's fine. I got enough money. I guess I just won't go anywhere. But I spent a lot of time like reading books, which I did anyways. I always read a lot of books. But I also spent a lot of time there like planning games. And so I was like, when I get back, I'm going to start a new group, probably with the guy. I kind of probably thought it was going to be like the same group, and we could continue on like our gaming. But I remember spending a lot of time like sitting there, planning out these games and these campaigns I was going to run. And when I got back, sure enough, like we did start like gaming again. But it wasn't as regular as I thought it would be, and the gaming group kind of fell apart a little bit. But one thing that did happen is for the longest time I had fallen out of miniature gaming. So I stopped playing miniature games when I was about 18, and now I'm like 23 or 24. And I was just like, well, I wasn't doing a lot of role playing. Everybody was busy and doing stuff. I can't really remember, but the role playing group was kind of like broken up now. And my dreams of having these grand like role playing campaigns just didn't happen. But I was like, man, I'd like to get back into like painting miniatures and playing miniature games. And so that's what happened around this time is I just got like really heavy back into miniature gaming and less role playing. I was still doing some, but it was a lot of miniature gaming. I got really hot and heavy into it, more so than I've ever been into my life. And I was like, I had a lot of disposable income because now I was a carpenter and I was making pretty good money. And I was also young and single, sort of, so I could, I had a lot of disposable income. So I just bought like so many miniatures and wasted so much time doing that stuff. Well, not wasted, but I did a lot of time miniature gaming. And so for the longest time, that's what I was doing. And I was really, really obsessed. It actually became a problem for a while. I'm not going to lie to you. It became like a real problem to the point where, I really had, it was almost like a real bad addiction. And I had to like stop myself and like, really like evaluate what I was doing. Now, obviously, I don't have a problem with it anymore like I did. But, one time it really was, all joking aside, like a problem. With the miniatures. But needless to say, like, fast forward to present time, really briefly to summarize it, I did get back into like role playing, obviously. I never stopped role playing, I never stopped gaming in general. I was able to get some other groups together, the last, few years and play some role playing games and whatnot. And we did have like a regular good group that had been playing for a few years now, and now that group's split up. Now I really don't have a face-to-face group at the moment, and that really sucks because our face-to-face group is broken up again. And to be honest with you, as I've gotten older, I've just gotten really picky about the people I want to game with, and it's become really hard to like just find people and vet people and go through that process. But luckily, since starting the YouTube channel, I've been able to reconnect with old people and new people here on YouTube. It's been awesome meeting all you guys and becoming friends with all you guys and meeting like-minded people. And so, I'm able to like run games again and have like a group again. But I do wish I could have that face-to-face group again. And it really sucks that I don't have one right now. Now, I'm sure that's will be remedied at some point. And really, I'm really pining to get a face-to-face group back together again. Not that I don't love playing games online with everybody, but like it's not the same as playing face-to-face with your friends. And I really hope that soon we can get a face-to-face group together. But yeah, that pretty much summarizes like the second half of like my gaming career in a really short, like really compact, like nutshell, without going into nitty gritty. And look, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hopefully you did hear me ramble about, gaming in my high school years and after high school and whatnot. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Coming up later this week, hopefully we have the OSE game coming up Sunday. Hopefully, it got canceled last time. It seems like the games are getting canceled more and more, which sucks, but I understand everybody's busy or whatnot. But hopefully we're going to do that this Sunday. No promises again, because I can't vouch for everybody else, right? Like I said earlier, I've been playing in that Star Trek game. Go check it out. I've been simulcasting it here on my channel. It's a really good group of players. And Bear's an excellent GM, and that's been a whole lot of fun to play. So go check that out for sure. And I'm also, I haven't said it here on the channel, but I am very tempted to run my own Star Trek game, and I've been slowly working on that. I haven't announced anything yet, only because I haven't figured out what the time slot's going to be. But I'm definitely going to do it at some point. I just have to figure out when I'm going to do it and how I'm going to do it and who the people playing are going to be. But look forward to that. That's going to come soon enough. And yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. So, if you guys enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. And I really appreciate all the guys, everybody that's subscribed so far. It means the world to me. It really, really boosts my confidence. I can't believe so many people love to just hear me talk about games and whatever. And that's really, just, it's humbling, guys. And I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all the support and everybody that has, the past few months since I've restarted the channel. It's been really awesome. And hopefully you guys will get more content. And yeah, until then, you guys have a good night. We'll see you later. Peace.